Does your new daddy issues have eliminated any other option?
I said I was sorry already.
Just joking.
No, you weren't.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. We are talking about Tell Me Lies Season 2, Episode 6. Now, Episode 5 was a clear standout of the show thus far, and Episode 6 of Season 2 is another standout for Tell Me Lies in its totality. I do think this episode overall is a lot more somber and reflective and slower and almost a bit more mature. The last episode was very heightened. Every single scene was up here in terms of drama, and this one is still very dramatic but feels a lot more adult and kind of reckoning with the really kind of mature fallout that happens with these sort of toxic situations. We open with Bree leaving a voicemail. Is this to Oliver? Just a quick thought. Who do we think this is to? Next, we have Pippa hard launching her relationship with Diana at Bree's wedding. I really like this scene. There's this really clever line in this scene where they say, depending on who asks is when their relationship started, I guess because there might be some overlap with Pippa dating Wrigley potentially, or more importantly, Diana dating Steven. Potentially Diana starts cheating on Steven with Pippa, and that's why depending who asks is the timeline that they give. Next, we have Steven's best man speech. This is just Steven being an absolute menace yet again. He makes the speech pretty much all about himself. It's all about how good his relationship is. He also kind of weirdly roasts Bree and Evan. He can't help but mention like, oh, it's taken so much hard work to get here. It's really good you guys persevered because this relationship has clearly been so much hard work. Watching from the sidelines, just so much hard work. It is a total Steven best man speech. I do not know why Evan let Steven do this speech. Maybe he isn't his best man and he just got up anyway, but like an insane speech from Steven, and I can't believe Evan let it happen because like, my God. Next, we have our first big outlandish scene of the episode, and this is when Lucy, as revenge for Steven basically rubbing his new relationship in her face, she then rubs her man in his face by asking him to come down to the pool in which she is fucking her new man for Steven to see, and then directly makes eye contact. This is Tell Me Lies at its most toxic, its most juicy. And it's interesting to see that in 2015, Lucy is still playing Steven's game, despite how this episode ends, where Lucy says, I'm done with the game, you fucking win. Like, she can't help but like kind of volley it back to Steven here. It's a really interesting scene, especially given where this episode goes. I also really like the juxtaposition, the hard cut here to then Lucy sleeping with Leo. I just like the fact that it's cutting from one sex scene to another sex scene. Really interesting, really telling, and it's interesting that we're watching a relationship that we know is doomed, right? We know that Lucy does not end up with this guy. Were his moans a bit strange, or was it just me? Like, ladies, please let me know, because I thought his moans were fucking bizarre. I really like this scene where Lucy tries to talk to Leo about forgiving your parents, and you know, she lost a father and she kind of regrets not forgiving him despite having fair enough grudges, and Leo very clearly sets a boundary with her and makes it clear that this isn't the same situation, but he appreciates where she's coming from. I think Leo comes off really emotionally mature here. He somehow validates what she's saying, doesn't make her feel bad, but does highlight that that's just not going to work for him. Really mature. I really like Leo. This is one of the most pleasant surprises of the season. I had my flags way up here when the season started with Leo. I think it's really interesting that so did Lucy. Lucy throws Leo's aggression in his face towards the end of the episode, and I find that really kind of fascinating because it is interesting to note that she's really keen to throw Leo's toxic behavior in his face, but she was happy to support Steven in his throughout the relationship. Something she highlights to Steven at the end of this episode where she says, you know, I was one of the few people that knew how shitty you really were, and I still tried to make it work. I still loved you. And it's interesting that Lucy, in the heat of the moment with Leo at the end of this episode, throws it in his face, given how good Leo has been in the present, how emotionally mature Leo has been time in and time out since they've started. Really, really fascinating. Also, I just want to clarify, I had a few comments on my last video saying that they think Diana faked failing her LSAT scores. I am struggling with this theory. I think it's a really cool theory on paper. And when initially it was presented to me, I went, yeah, cool, what a good idea. But there are a few things I'm struggling with to buy this theory. The first off is the fact that outside of Steven, we have seen her crying about the scores. And next, it's this new scene that substantiates the idea that Diana's father is actually mad at her for failing. Now, this might be a long game ruse, and really what's happening is she's trying to separate from Steven and doesn't want him meeting her father or interacting with her father more. However, I do think potentially she did actually fail the LSAT. Next, we have the first real unhinged Steven line of the episode. This is when he's talking with Diana and he says, if your father is talking to you like you're your mother, maybe it's because you are acting like your mother. Absolutely insane.
He's blunt. And he was talking to you like he talks to your mom. Maybe that's because you're acting like your mom.
Steven's emotional intelligence is like below the toilet at this point. Like, he's so bad at navigating relationships. Next, we have some really nice subtle foreshadowing with Wrigley leaving countless voicemails to his brother. I'm not sure if his brother has offed himself yet or whether that is coming, but a really interesting moment. And I like the way this show always sets up interesting foreshadowing. You're constantly feeling like something bad is happening for all these characters. And if something bad isn't currently happening, you're worried that something is coming in the future. It's really well done. Next, we have Evan planning a Thanksgiving thing to kind of get Bree back, and then his new girlfriend Molly shows up. This was just rough. This was just a rough situation. You knew this was going to go badly. I didn't think it was going to go this badly though. Like, my God. Next, we have a series of scenes where Bree is trying to kind of like alpha Molly. She constantly mentions like, oh, I've got a hairdryer in your apartment. You know, she starts making her boobs look all good, and it's just like really painful to watch. You know, it's like, Bree, babe, what are you doing? Focus on the 45-year-old man's marriage you're ruining. Like, please, just leave it alone for a second. Next, we have probably one of the worst Steven quotes of the entire series. This is the moment where Steven says to Diana, oh, we could have been spending the day with your father, except your daddy issues had to go ruin it. Diana then responds and goes, Steven, why are you treating me like this? And he goes, I'm joking. This was insane.
I didn't say we should leave.
Good. Because your new daddy issues have eliminated any other option.
I said I was sorry already.
I was joking.
No, you weren't.
Like, Steven's gas line is just always like up here, but this was like another level. Like, this interaction was nuts. I really like the following scene where Lucy and Bree are talking about Pippa and the fact that Pippa is now friends with Diana, and then Pippa comes out and joins them and can tell they've been talking about her, and then Bree just breaks and goes, yeah, Lucy was talking about you and the fact that you're friends with Diana. And I love the moment where Lucy gets so defensive and goes, yeah, well, Steven's mean to a lot of people, basically implying, why are you having pity and empathy for Diana? I'm jealous. It should be going towards me because I had to deal with Steven's shit. I found this really interesting because Pippa, countless times in season 1, tried to warn Lucy, tried to be there for Lucy, tried to get Lucy out of that toxic situation, and Lucy was not having a bar of it. And it's really hypocritical and cruel for Lucy to be jealous here. Now, obviously, this is projection. Lucy is mad at herself for getting lost in a relationship with Steven, but I really need to highlight here, this is not Pippa being a bad friend. This is not Pippa being hypocritical and like preferring Diana and not looking out for her real friend Lucy. Pippa looked out for Lucy on multiple occasions and Lucy shut her down. So like, Lucy is totally in the wrong here.
Also, I didn't know where to put this, but I really like the moment where they were sitting at the table and Steven looks at a digital camera and then Bree takes it away before he can like dunk it in water like he did in season 1. A really good callback, and Bree looks at Pippa and Pippa notices and then they both leave.
Next, we have Leo's ex history. I really like what they've been doing with Leo this season. It feels like a massive misdirect. He initially introduced his character as someone who was violent, and I was really worried about him. And I thought that what they were getting at here with Leo's ex history was that he was abusive. And I still feel like it might be going there. There was a line from Steven where he did bring that up, but I'm not sure if that was a misdirect or not. Let me know what you guys think. But as far as what this episode covers, it ends up being that Leo's ex is the one who Steven cheated with while he was with Diana, and that was also cheating on Leo. Does that make any sense? Like she was cheating on Leo with Steven, who was cheating on Diana. Yeah, massive twist. And I think Lucy calling him out here, while initially valid, the outburst that Lucy has at Leo towards the end just feels like she's really mad at Leo because what he withheld from her led to her losing a battle with Steven. As Leo kind of highlights, right? His point in that argument towards the end of the episode is like, this game you guys have going on, I can't be around it. It's toxic. It's bad. And it feels like another relationship that you're in. Really interesting scene, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Next, we have the messiest part of the episode. This is the game Slap Shots. This is a massive Chekhov's gun. All right. Basically, the game is you take a shot and someone slaps you. Whoever got you to take the shot gets to slap you after you take the shot. This is a painful experience. And the whole time You are waiting for something to come out of this. Again, a Chekhov's gun situation, but it doesn't go in the direction you think it is. The very obvious direction you're waiting for is that Stephen knows that Leo has previously had issues with his temper and violence. So you think Stephen is going to really slap Leo hard and Leo is going to then retaliate in a really violent fashion and the night's going to be ruined. I think that's what we all expected, but it doesn't go there. I really like every single slap for a long time in this game feels really heated and loaded, and there's a lot of personal history behind each slap. Who chooses to slap who is really interesting. Who commits to a slap and who just does a playful caress is really fascinating. And I love that it actually blows up in a direction that I feel like none of us saw coming, which is that Molly slaps Evan, I believe. Really effective moment. My heart was falling out of my ass like this entire game. Like I really was nervous for where it was going to go. I thought it was excellently well done. Said a lot about all these characters. And I really like that Leo didn't take the bait. And I like that they started just like slapping the shit out of each other for a bit. And I also love the sense of poetry that happens with Lucy eventually slapping Diana. This was so well done. This was so well done because obviously that slap was not part of the game, but it says something about the way that if we make violence casual, it then becomes behavior that we can repeat in other contexts. And this is Lucy doing that, right? Like she's just played a game of slapping and now she thinks it's okay subconsciously to slap Diana when Diana says something heated. And in reference to that, I think what Diana said was awful to Lucy. It absolutely was awful to Lucy. However, Lucy was really spitting venom, and I think Diana just got heated and said something that probably came out harsher than she usually would. I feel like Diana normally is a lot more measured and mousy and controlled with what she says. She's not perfect. She's not innocent. But I do not think she is normally that nasty. However, I think Lucy was really coming for her and she just came back with a cheap shot and then Lucy slapped her. Absolutely insane. Peak of the episode. Fantastic moment. And I loved the conversation leading up to that where Leo is chewing out Steven. Steven's chewing out Lucy. Lucy's chewing out Steven. And then Diana. It's just so good. And it's all these really well-written characters absolutely chewing each other out. Effective scene. Well done. I love these shows where it really relies on how much you know and what you think of them really plays into these sort of scenes. Really effective, really well done. I also love Steven after all his objectively abusive behavior, calling out Lucy for verbally assaulting my sister. Like, yes, technically she did yell at his sister in a bit of a nasty way, but like really like verbal assault, like just an absolutely insane thing to throw out. After that scene where Lucy slaps Diana, we get this incredible scene with Leo calling out Lucy. And he basically says, Lucy, it wasn't just Steven in there. You're playing this game. You're violent. You're angry. You are also toxic. You enjoy this game. You get a rise out of this. And I love this conversation with Leo. I think it was so well written. I love the moment where Lucy brings up his abusive behavior because I brought that up too. In previous videos, you've seen me say I was really nervous about Leo when he was introduced. But Lucy did not have a problem initially with Leo's abusive behavior. She is bringing it up here to basically call him a hypocrite and invalidate his valid criticism in the current moment, in the present, about her behavior in that room, basically by going, oh, well, you're violent too. You have a violent history, which you've told me about. I've seen you be violent before, so don't you call me out for this right now. It was deflection. And while she might normally have a point, it's like if that was an actual concern of hers, if that was a valid concern, she would have talked about that literally any other time than in this argument. It's another example of Lucy learning this toxic behavior from Steven and spitting it outwards towards other people. I think this episode, as well as what is speculated to happen in episode 7, really seems interested in interrogating Lucy's part in the toxic cycle between her and Steven. Again, I love the line from Leo where he says, Lucy, you fight dirty. It's such a good summary of how she fights, how Steven fights, and I'm really proud of Leo for leaving this situation. I hope he stays gone. Like, genuinely, for his own good, I hope he stays gone. Really well done scene, really well done fight. This whole episode was just full of really great dialogue. Next, we have this interaction with Evan and Bree, and I'm just going to say it. This might get me in some hot water. Like, people might disagree. I think Evan was right in what he was saying. Now, does it come off judgy? Does it come off cheap? Is it probably not the best person to be saying that, like, hey, because you're a foster kid, he's probably feeding into some like daddy issues, father complex thing? Like, yeah, that is bad. but the essence of what he was trying to say is he's an older man. The only reason these weird older men prey upon these young, vulnerable girls is because they're trying to prey on certain insecurities and prey on the fact that they're young and naive and like kind of pick at that. And yes, it might be some parallels that she's not ready to draw, and the way he worded it wasn't particularly good, but I do think that is what's going on. Oliver is a shifty bastard. Can I just say, I do not trust Oliver as far as I can throw him. My initial read of last episode was maybe that the barmaid thought that she was his daughter and he was proving not, but I think maybe an easier read and the more likely read is that he is currently, if not previously, bringing other girls to that bar as well, and she's just disgusted with his behavior. I think Oliver probably has a bunch of other younger girls currently on the roster. I don't think Bree is his only affair. In fact, I would not be surprised if in a future episode we find out that not only was he not with Bree this Thanksgiving, but he wasn't with his wife either. He's with another young girl. That checks out to me. And I think Evan basically calling out Oliver, who he doesn't know it's Oliver, but calling out this older man in Bree's life for basically preying on the fact that she's kind of in a vulnerable space and it's repeating certain dynamics that she might have had in childhood. It might be something that she's not ready to hear, especially from Evan, and maybe he didn't need to word it like that, but I think he's right. Oliver's a piece of shit. We know this is coming. We know something seedy is happening. We know something bad is going to come with Oliver. Next, I really like this line between Diana and Pippa, where Diana says, "We can be friends because we like each other, not just because we worry about each other." That's a really sweet line, and obviously, given the fact that they get romantically involved, feels like really sweet foreshadowing. So it was like a really cutting, smart line. I just feel like the way female relationships and friendships have been explored in this show, this feels like a really sweet, beautiful moment kind of bursting through what normally feels very catty and toxic and spiteful. This is a really beautiful line that I really liked in this episode. I then like the following scene where Pippa and Diana start texting while they're in opposite beds with each other. This is what got my head going about, probably the reason, depending on who asks, the reason they give a different answer as to when they got together is because it might have been emotional or physical cheating on one of their partners, if not both of their partners, or just Diana towards Steven. I thought it was a really beautiful scene. I also like this little look that Diana gives towards Pippa, but it kind of breaks the fourth wall and feels like she's looking at us. It's a beautiful look. You can tell she's full of love and kind of longing for Pippa. And I think that's really effectively communicated by the fact that it feels like she's looking at us. Really well done. Next and finally, we have this scene where Lucy goes over to Steven and says she's done with the game. Like, Steven, you win. We're done. I don't want to play this game anymore. Really well done. This is obviously off the back of Leo leaving her. Now the stakes are raised. So she says to Steven, I don't want to be part of this anymore. You know, it's really interesting because earlier Steven was talking about to Evan the fact that like no one really knew how shitty he was, and now he doesn't really care if people find out. Evan then says to Steven, you do really care whether people think you're shitty or not. Really interesting moment, but I think it pays off here because Lucy basically comes up to Steven and says, hey, I was in love with you. I dated you, even knowing how shitty you were, even knowing how awful you were, everything you were capable of, everything you've done, I loved you. And it's interesting because Steven is still lying and misleading Diana. He still gaslights her and lies to her and tries to convince Diana that he's a good person. He also tries to have that with his sister. But there is some truth to that, right? Like with Lucy, he was really just toxic and nasty, and she's still stuck by him. And I think it actually hits his brain. Like he does have this moment of pause at the end of the episode where he goes, oh, there is something to be said about that. Like it's fucked up and it's awful and it's toxic. This isn't a beautiful ending, but it's really fascinating that Steven takes some pause and goes, I have been worried with the fact that like I can't maintain this lie, this image forever. And Lucy did know how awful I was, and she's the first person that is willing to get down in the mud with me and really play these games. I don't need to convince her I'm a good person. I can be shitty to her and she can be shitty back, and maybe I miss that, you know? I don't like this facade I have to play. And it almost reframes that conversation he was having with Evan earlier. Initially, that scene felt like he was coming to this moment of like, oh, I can't pretend anymore. I don't even think I care. But really what's going on is it's like, well, maybe I want someone around like Lucy who can get in the mud with me. And it doesn't even matter if I feel shitty or not. It doesn't even matter if they think I'm shitty or not, because they will be there with me and we can be shitty together. I thought it was a really interesting moment. You know, it's this interesting moment he's having where he goes, oh, Lucy knows the real me. This might not be as fun and as light as Diana, who I'm lying to, but there's something to be said about someone who's willing to be that dark with me. Now, while we are talking about Lucy being dark, I just want to speculate. I want to put it in this video to make a guess, but apparently the writer or the showrunner, Megan Oppenheimer, has said that in episode 7, she has written a scenario where Lucy does something where Megan Oppenheimer feels like she can get cancelled. Like the showrunner feels like she might get cancelled for what she gets Lucy to do in episode 7. And apparently it's going to split the fan base, split the morals, and I think I know what it might be. So I'm going to put it in this video and you guys can let me know what you think of this. So what I think this situation might be is Lucy fabricates a false accusation against Lydia's brother to get Lydia's brother in trouble for the real essay he's done towards Pippa and other people. And the reason I think that would be so divisive is because it substantiates the idea that like toxic men have, that false allegations happen, right? And false allegations are really common. But it also is for a greater good, for an accusation that isn't going to be believed or substantiated, whether it be Pippa or this other girl people are talking about. I think this plot point has been referenced in this episode and the previous episode enough that I think it is going to be substantial. And I think maybe Lucy is going to get behind Pippa and feel bad for the fact that Pippa can't actually substantiate what Lydia's brother did to her. So Lucy's going to help either recreate it and take some photos, or Lucy's going to claim that she was also assaulted, which is a false accusation, in order to get a real abuser in trouble. I think this is properly controversial. This is edgy material, and I do think it will turn some heads and will open up some discourse about false accusations, believing women, holding people accountable for what they do wrong. That is my prediction, and I heard it had something to do with Lydia and her brother. Now, I might be running off false information, but in my opinion, I think that could be where it's heading, and I just want to put it in this video because, yeah, I think that is appropriately juicy and will get people talking. It will be an edgy thing to explore. In my opinion, if that's where it goes, false accusation or not, if Lydia's brother's done something that awful, like he absolutely deserves any justice that's coming to him. And if it takes Lucy making a false allegation to get him in trouble for the real things he's done, fuck him. Go get him, Lucy. But yeah, that's just my prediction. I might be totally wrong. If so, I would like to take a writing credit if they ever use that in season 3. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying these recaps of Tell Me Lies. Please let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments down below and what you'd like me to talk about next. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.